The third edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now. This is Carolina basketball.
Black holding high, goes to Daugherty. Daugherty in the double team, gives it back to Black with 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan, jumper from out on the left, good! Michigan out of timeout. And Weber, front court, Carolina thought he'd travel with it. Weber, front court, Carolina with foul. He takes a timeout, they're out of timeout. Technical foul on Michigan.
Now gets it away to Donald Williams. Down the side to Stackhouse. Stackhouse streaking in on Park. Reverse dunk is good, and he gets fouled by Park. Oh, my goodness, what a dunk.
Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out to him. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. Hey, it's over. Carolina has won the national championship.
Belton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. 89-72. And how about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
Matthews off the mark, and this year the confetti is going to fall for North Carolina. They're not going to be denied this time.
From HeelToughBlog.com, this is the Four Corners podcast, featuring your host, Josh Marlowe. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services, and the sky is officially falling in Chapel Hill and around the Carolina basketball community as Walker Kessler, after stringing along Carolina fans for the last, you'd say, a day or so, has announced he will not return to Chapel Hill for his sophomore season and is instead transferring to Auburn and playing for Bruce Pearl and continue his college basketball career closer to home. Buddy, we've been awaiting this decision really since yesterday. We were kind of informed that this decision was coming soon. And then today, pretty much since about lunchtime, really, we were kind of on Walker Kessler watch, kind of like last year when we were dealing with Kerwin Walton's commitment. And, of course, he ultimately committed to Carolina. If I remember, it was like at 11 o'clock at night when he finally decided to announce his decision to come to UNC. But this is different because Walker Kessler had, of course, entered the transfer portal the Monday after the season finished up and after losing to Wisconsin in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Many Tar Heel fans believe that his transfer will push Roy Williams to the brink of retirement and ultimately retiring. And then Hubert Davis was asked a question about recruiting him at his introductory press conference just about a week ago and made it known that he wanted Walker Kessler back in Chapel Hill and a part of Carolina basketball moving forward. And Hubert spent a lot of time recruiting Walker Kessler, or re-recruiting Walker Kessler, that is. Ultimately, it didn't work out. And as we've grown to learn in our time doing or covering Carolina athletics, Carolina basketball as well, when we don't get a guy, our fan base melts down.
I mean, let's just be honest here. I mean, it's not just if we don't get a guy. It's just about every little thing the fan base is going to melt down. This is not the end of the world. I mean, look, it definitely stings here, especially with the fact that a lot of the sources close to the situation seem to have, gotten some wrong intel from the family, whatever. I'm not really sure where that source came from, but it seemed like, as you mentioned, they will put on Walker Kessler watch officially right around lunchtime. Yeah, that was about accurate. And from that moment on, the belief was that Carolina was in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
As Armando Bacot has come out and said, he knew that he wasn't coming back. So, it's kind of interesting. I don't know what went wrong. My thing is, look, you can't really blame some of these big-time corneal sites because not only did one site happen, pretty much everybody had this same excuse. So the belief from just about everybody was that Walker Kessler was coming back. I'm getting these guys mixed up in my head because we have so many guys that are leaving. But that was the consensus in most people's minds. So it definitely hurt for Carolina because, as we had mentioned, a couple of times here over the last few weeks, this was the best big man that was in the transfer portal. So now you've got to kind of scramble a little bit. There's still some options out there. As we mentioned, there are guys that haven't entered the transfer portal yet that will. I mean, yesterday, Mac McClung entered the transfer portal. That's a big name that is, just now getting into the transfer portal. So there are still guys that have not made decisions yet that are, maybe potentially waiting out, some staff changes at schools, whatever, that could eventually hit the transfer portal. So I think the thing here is that you got to be patient, but at the same time, you got to realize that this is going to be a tough season for Carolina. You're starting with a brand new head coach that has not coached a game at the Division I varsity level in his career. You say, well, he should have been able to bring back Walker Kessler. No, the fact that they were even in the hunt for Walker Kessler after most people were of the belief that there was zero chance that Walker Kessler would even entertain anybody from the staff talking to him was pretty amazing. And, look, I know he's not a superstar. You've already got one guy out of the portal. And remember that this is without Hubert Davis having his staff finalized yet. So he's doing the things that he needs to do so far. Sometimes, things just aren't going to break your way. So, I don't think that this is something that people should be overreacting to. But as you said, we know they are going to overreact to this. It's just what happened. And, hopefully within the next couple of weeks or so, Carolina can, do a little bit of scrambling. That's a perfect metaphor, especially just one day after the Masters tournament just finished up. And find, a guy or two that they can add in there that can sort of calm the people that are concerned. And, look, I do think there is one aspect of this that you probably have to be concerned about long term, and that is that right now, Leaky Black is your tallest player on your roster.
Well, what it does, the reason why I think he was so coveted and why you wanted him back, 5-star talent, but right now you don't know what your front court's looking like heading into next season. You lost, with him not coming back, 4 guys to the transfer portal, Kessler, Garrison Brooks, Sterling Manley, and Walker Miller. You've got Day'Ron Sharp in the NBA draft. You've got Armando Bacot going through the NBA draft process. That's 6 guys from your front court that are potentially not going to be on your roster next season. 4 of them, for sure, aren't going to be back for 2021, 2022. Hubert Davis has emphasized that they want to play a more modern style of basketball. He probably right now doesn't have a choice. And bringing up Leaky Black is a great thing because he's your tallest player. And maybe a smaller lineup will get the best out of him. But, and I stressed this when we were talking about this on the roster podcast we just did yesterday, if you're going to play smaller, you still got to rebound the ball really well. And right now, Carolina doesn't have anybody proven on their roster from the backcourt that's going to go rebound the basketball the way you need to if you're going to play smaller. And I think that's the thing, is that if you brought him back, there's a reasonable belief that you're going to have Armando Bacot back for next season. Well, then you feel a lot better heading into next season if you're playing a smaller lineup. You're not going to have the depth that you had this season, and you'll miss that in certain games where foul trouble will come up, and not having 4 or 5 guys at your disposal would hurt you. But right now, you're looking at the potential of not having anybody. You landed Justin McCoy out of the transfer portal from Virginia, and he brings some flexibility, but he's still only 6'8". You don't have a lot of size down low right now. And what's Carolina's thing when they're really, really good is that their size overwhelms opponents. Unless you're going to be as good as Baylor's guards were this year and winning the national championship, size ultimately does play a factor in the NCAA tournament, in the Final Four, and it really, the teams that usually have the most size benefit in March and are legitimate contenders to win the national championship. Look, we're not going to berate the kid. This was a decision that we knew was possible. I think, as you mentioned, Carolina even being in the running was still pretty remarkable. And I think, a lot of people are already coming for Hubert Davis. It wasn't from a lack of effort that he didn't get Walker Kessler back in Chapel Hill. He pretty much, from the moment he became the head coach of Carolina, that was the most important thing he's done in his first week or so on the job. That's probably a big reason as to why right now his coaching staff isn't finalized, because he's been more focused on bringing in that player and trying to land recruits. And so this wasn't from a lack of effort.
The guy went down on a family vacation and practically gave a timeshare speech to these people in the middle of their vacation. He spent 4.5 hours trying to convince this young man to come and play for him. Hubert Davis is not the reason that this didn't work out for Carolina. It's just that simple. Like, I don't really know what else you could want from Hubert Davis, especially in this time period. Because you've got to remember that there are still some recruiting limitations. And I'm assuming that also is part of what the transfer portal. You're still in a recruiting debt period. So the fact that he was doing as much as he possibly could, and I think you're right. I think that's a great observation. That is more than likely the reason that his staff is not finalized right now. You would imagine that over the next couple of weeks, they will attempt to probably get the staff together. But at the same time, he will get the staff together, but there is not going to be a certain period of time, even a week, set aside where they are just going to be able to focus on let's get the staff together. Like right now, their attention turns to a different guy in this class, that is in this recruiting class for the freshmen, that I think a lot of people are pointing to. One thing that I wanted to talk about with McCoy that you brought up, I think one of the big things with McCoy that people have to realize as well is that his best role on this team this year, and maybe even next year, would be to come off the bench. If you put him in a starting role right out of the gate, I just don't know how successful he's really going to be, because I feel like he's a guy that needs to be able to grow in the system. Because you look at his numbers at Virginia. This is not a guy that's coming in after averaging even 15, 20 minutes on the floor. He did not play all that often, and he's still going to have to build up to be that type of player that you're eventually hoping he can be, which is a guy that's 6'8", can give you something on the glass, can be aggressive, and handle himself on the defensive end, but can also step out and knock down shots.
Yeah, I feel like you're probably right. You want him coming off the bench. His best role, in my opinion, will be a ultimate 3-and-D guy. You bring him off the bench to knock down some shots and play some defense. And the thing about the staff is, look, yeah, you got to have a coaching staff, and I get that. You also got to have kids to coach. And right now, you've got 5 scholarships available. You can get, I know he missed out on King Rice. You're not going to swing on miss on every coaching candidate that you want. So you can get the coaches that you want to come to your program at really whatever time you want to come. It doesn't ultimately matter if you don't have the talent. We'll mention, where does Carolina look next? You still got to look in the portal. and maybe find a diamond in the rough or two or wait for someone else to enter the portal. But there's a product out of